same direction.
How many guys we see here today are in Formula One in about 10 years?
If I would say all, it would not be true, but many, many.
Well, more news from the Karting Federation as well, that they've set up a foundation which will take 3 or 4 drivers, 3 or 4 great top drivers from next year's Karting Championships into Formula 3 in 1998. And so they'll be looking at 11 or 12 drivers early next year. They'll be taking them through courses in English and dealing with the press, and then giving them a chance to go into motor racing as well, into Formula 3. So that's great news for some of the young kartists who struggle to move on through the ranks of motorsport, although we've seen many do it in the past, of course. Many top drivers in the top championships in the world, in Formula 1, in touring car racing, set off their careers in this form of motorsport. So that's good news for the future, but let's get back to the present and the World Championships with the pre-final for the Formula A class. Now remember, the Formula A class just below the very top class, which we'll be looking at later in the programme, Formula Super A, but these are still amongst the top karters in the world, and we've got quite a lot of British interest in this one, with both Jenson Button and Anthony Davidson competing in this race, and both of them have been running well this year. We're about to get this pre-final underway. Remember, this pre-final, the results of this really just dictate the grid positions for the final, but it is very important to be up there at the end of this race in order to be in a good position for the final itself. But remember, it doesn't actually score any points or anything, this race. It's all about finishing it, and finishing it relatively safely up near the front. So away from the start then, and it's Kazuki Matsura, the Japanese driver, with the initial advantage with the green crash helmet up front. And number 149, just see him sneaking through the picture there as the battle going on further back. Number 168, Jenson Button, just moving up there. One of the 2 British drivers in this Formula A pre-final with a very realistic chance. There's the other one, number 191, that's Anthony Davidson, Britain's top Formula A competitor this year. Came so close to winning the European Championship, and there he is, number 191. Keep an eye on him. He's been in good form all weekend so far, and didn't do quite so well in the timed practice, so he had a little bit of a slower performance in time practice than he would have liked. That meant he was in 10th place for the heats. And remember, each of these drivers has had to come through a succession of 5 heats to make it through to this pre-final, and your positions in each and every one of those 5 heats determine then your grid position for this pre-final. And Anthony Davidson, who had a good run in most of his heats, from 10th place, he won his first heat, came second in his second heat, was leading the third, but had an engine seize on him, and that cost him some time. Meanwhile, look at this change to the lead as Giorgio Pantano comes through into the lead. Pantano, number 101, the reigning European champion, and he has now got past Kazuki Matsura, and Pantano looking for his first World Championship title. He's European champion, twice European champion, but he wants this World Championship, and now he's taken over the lead, tucks down in behind the steering wheel, but Anthony Davidson has come up into second place. He gets past Matsura as well. So Davidson now from 10th place on the grid for this pre-final. Remember, that seizure he suffered in one of the heats dropped him back down the order again. So starting this pre-final in 10th place, but Davidson in the early stages already up into second, and now chasing after his nemesis, Giorgio Pantano. They've been battling all year. In fact, Davidson won more races in the European Championship than Pantano, and lost out in the title by just 1 point to Pantano. And now they're running 1 and 2 in the pre-final. Great battle in prospect between these two. And right behind them as well is Sandro Mara, number 119. Keep an eye out for him, because Mara had a very good European Championship. He ended up finishing 3rd in the European Championship in the end. And so we've got the top 3 of the European Championship running 1, 2, 3 here in this World Championship pre-final. Sandro Mara only had 1 victory in the European Championship, but very, very consistent all season. In fact, he comes into second, gets past Davidson, and goes chasing after Pantano now. So Sandro Mara, the Italian, up into second place. But remember, this race is purely to determine grid positions for the grand final. And what you'll find is many of the drivers, many of the teams, actually keeping back their very best equipment for the grand final itself. They have several different engines they can use over the weekend. They have 3 engines that are scrutinized and sealed as the weekend gets underway, and they have to use one of those engines in any particular race. And what they'll quite often do is save the best engine for the grand final. Look at this though, Sandro Mara takes the lead from Giorgio Pantano now. Anthony Davidson looking perhaps to go into second place. So Sandro Mara up front, Pantano in second place. then Davidson in third, and the rest of them flashing through the picture. Watch out for number 164, James Wright, another British entry. He started from the back. He made it through into the final by finishing in the top 6 in the repechage. Didn't have such a good run through the heats, but he made it into the final, and now with a chance of working his way up the order a little bit. Matsuura still in 4th position. Behind him is Jean-Christophe Ravier, the Frenchman, number 153. Jenson Button is in that little group, still behind the gaggle here, as Davidson comes under a bit more pressure now from Kusuke Matsuura. Japanese drivers really coming on strong now in Formula A, Formula Super A. There's that other little battle going on further back with Jean-Christophe Ravier. Jenson Button is involved there as well. Also James Courtney, the Australian, number 129, who's had a pretty good season this year. A little bit up and down at times. Started off the season well, but didn't have a very good end to the season. So that meant he ended up down in 12th place in the European Championship. Courtney. There's Jenson Button, 168, the Union Jack on the back of his helmet. And Jenson Button is from Frome in Somerset, 3 times British Junior Champion. Look at this, Davidson still battling with Matsuura, and well, looking for a way past. Sandro Mara is our race leader. Giorgio Pantano in 2nd place, Matsuura in 3rd, then Davidson in 4th place. Davidson looking for 3rd place, and he goes through again. So Anthony Davidson, 17 years old, from Hemel Hempstead. Davidson, twice the RAC British Junior Champion. Had a lot of success in British Championships. And of course, Anthony Davidson, there he is, 191. In fact, just waving at Matsuura there, not quite clear what that was about. Oh, and there's a little bit of contact further back down the order there. No major damage done, and everybody survives the moment. That was Nicolas Chiesa, number 130, that took a little jump in the air, but it doesn't seem to have slowed him down at all. Meanwhile, moving up, Jean-Christophe Ravier there, the Frenchman on the Tony Kart. He's moved up a position. And Sandro Mara still leads. Pantano 2nd, Davidson 3rd, and Ravier now in 4th place. As Pantano closes up once again to Sandro Mara, but we're not seeing the sort of domination from Pantano that we have seen on previous occasions. He won both races here at South Garda when they held the opening rounds of the European Championship here in April. Pantano was dominant on those 2 occasions, but he doesn't seem to be quite so quick here, but perhaps he's saving it all for the final itself. So Mara leads, 119. Davidson back into 2nd place now. Davidson's got past Pantano. And remember this, every place you gain on the race here is another place gained on the grid for the final. And quite long races, so they've got also to think about saving their tyres. They can't use the tyres too hard. They have to use the same set of tyres for both this pre-final and the final. So if you use the tyres too hard, if you charge too much in this race and try and establish a very healthy advantage, then it's possible you could fry your tyres and then you're in bad shape for the final. All these things have to be thought about. So these youngsters in karting, it's not just a simple case of getting in and going flat out at all. There's an awful lot of thinking involved, an awful lot of planning, and just to make it through those 5 heats and into this pre-final has taken a great degree of determination, of care, of concentration. But the grand goal is the final itself and trying to win the World Championship. It means so much to these drivers, and it can mean so much to their future careers as well. So Pantano battling with Jean-Christophe Ravier. Ravier, not such a well-known name in Formula A. Hasn't had a particularly strong season this year, but he's got past Pantano there. So Jean-Christophe Ravier on a charge, and driving for Tony Kart. He's got Vortex power and Bridgestone tyres. Sandro Mara here has got Dunlop tyres, and Dunlop trying to get back after what's been a bit of a disappointing season for them. The main battle in the tyre wars, if you like, is between Dunlop and Bridgestone. And Dunlop have produced some extra special tyres for this World Championships. But it's been a few years since they've had success at World Championship level. They used to dominate in the Formula Super A category, but the last couple of years have seen wins for Vega in '94 and Bridgestone last year. And Dunlop coming back at it now with Sandro Mara. There he is, number 119, using Dunlop tyres and going well here. Davidson in second. The question is, can Sandro Mara keep those tyres in good shape for the final? But look at this, Jean-Christophe Javier. He's the one on the charge. The Frenchman comes up into second place now. He's got past Anthony Davidson as well. Again, it's only for the grid positions. Pantano's dropped back, and that's a bit of a surprise, I have to say. Giorgio Pantano, European champion. He's got support from AMG Mercedes, the team that runs cars, Mercedes, in the International Touring Car Championship. And Pantano really is somebody to be reckoned on for the future, but he's dropping back a bit and perhaps hasn't got the setup quite right here this weekend. Or perhaps he's just saving himself for the final. So the pre-final comes to its conclusion. Sandro Mara wins on the Mike 2 chassis with Barilla Power Dunlop tyres. Jean-Christophe Javier has driven very well to come up into second place. Anthony Davidson in third. Roberto Toninelli fourth. Kosuke Matsura in fifth place. Then James Courtney and Giorgio Pantano in seventh place. We'll be back with the final. This is it then, preparations for the grand final itself of Formula A. We've still got the Formula Super A's to look at, but this is what they're all chasing now. And it's so important to have a good result in this, and well, it's all about winning it, to be honest. We've got Anthony Davidson, Jenson Button both up there, but there's Davidson. There's problems trying to get Anthony Davidson's kart started, and well, he's being pushed to, of course, bump start these engines, but Anthony Davidson in trouble. He can't get the engine running for this final race, and this is incredible. Disappointment for Anthony Davidson, being pushed by brother Andrew, who's his mechanic, but they cannot get that machine started. And Anthony Davidson, who finished third in the pre-final, he was perfectly set up here. He was second in the European Championships. He was looking so strong for the World Championships, but they cannot get that engine fired up. And Anthony Davidson, run by former world champion Terry Fullerton on the Fullerton kart, is not going to make it into this race. And what a bitter, bitter disappointment for the winner of 4 of the European races this year. That really is unbelievable luck. And Davidson is going to have to sit it out by the look of it. The rest of them are lining up in place now. Sandro Mara and Jean-Christophe Javier on the front row. A gap where Davidson should be on the second. Roberto Toninelli is on that second row. And you can see there's Davidson in the background. And they have not been able to get, well, in fact, that's not Davidson, that's another one. That's Jérôme Bourca, the Frenchman. But Davidson has not been able to get his kart going, and that is the end of his chances. Oh, there's a problem in the background there as they try and get the race underway. Red light stays on, so the race is not started yet. 2 karts involved, and Jenson Button is one of those. The other British hopeful, 168, that is Jenson Button, and he's been collected by Ricardo van der Ende, and more disappointment for the British drivers. Jenson Button, who also was in such good shape here. He had qualified back on the 5th row, but he was in a good position for the championship. And dear oh dear, both of Britain's top runners in Formula A out of the action before we've even got the racing underway. So that changes things. That will give Giorgio Pantano a little breath of relief, I should think, because Davidson and Button, for that matter, major challengers for him. And so it means that his opposition has been reduced somewhat, as it looks as though we're going to try and get this race underway this time as they come round. Let's hope it's a clean start. The green light comes on and away they go, and it's an excellent start for Jean-Christophe Javier, number 153 from the front row. The Frenchman who fought his way up from further down in that first race. He was 8th place for the pre-final. More problems, well, that is indeed Anthony Davidson, unable to get his kart fired up. And there's Jérôme Bourca still struggling to get his one started as well. And it turns out it's ignition problems for Anthony Davidson. Just cannot get that machine of his fired up. And so, end of any chance. So there's the race leaders battling away now. Sandro Mara has come ahead now. And Javier's dropped back down to 3rd place. It's Roberto Toninelli now up into 2nd place. Toninelli, who had quite a competitive run in the European Championships on occasion this year, but not consistently up front. And he's now in 2nd place, chasing Sandro Mara. 3rd place for Jean-Christophe Javier. And then it's Ronnie Quintarelli in 4th place, the number 180 machine. But Sandro Mara at the moment is our race leader on the Mike Wilson chassis. Mike Wilson, the 6 times British karting, well, 6-time world champion, British driver who raced under an Italian license. Mike Wilson, the last time he won the World Championships was back in 1989. Oh, and he's been passed, that's Sandro Mara's been passed by number 155, Roberto Toninelli. And Toninelli, who was 4th in the pre-final on the Haas kart with Titan Power and Dunlop tyres, he goes into the lead. So the Dunlop's in good shape here at the moment, but really not much to choose between them and the Bridgestones. Dunlop 1 and 2 at the moment, Bridgestone in 3rd, but no, it's 2nd because Jean-Christophe Ravier comes into 2nd, and in fact also moving up goes Quintarelli, Ronnie Quintarelli rather. No more problems, in fact they've made contact there, and Quintarelli drops back again with James Courtney involved in that, and indeed Mara's in trouble. Sandro Mara, number 119, is in trouble. He dropped back, you could just see him in the background there. There was some sort of contact, so Sandro Mara, the winner of the pre-final, he's out of it as well. So we've lost so many of the potential winners out of this race. Davidson, Sandro Mara, we've lost Jenson Button as well. And so the battle goes on up front with Roberto Toninelli now leading. There's number 180, Ronnie Quintarelli, who's dropped right back. So there's Roberto Toninelli, our race leader. Jean-Christophe Ravier in 2nd. There's Pantano. So what can Giorgio Pantano do now? He's in 3rd place. You might expect him to close this gap up now, but he still seems to be, he's under pressure from those behind. He really can't seem to break away as quickly as might have been expected. Pantano not quite as quick as we would normally see him. So he's struggling to stay ahead of the rest of them. Well, up there is number 187, who's fought his way up from quite a long way down, Polo Villamil. He was only in 17th place on the grid for the final, and he fought his way up there. Fantastic performance from the Spanish driver. Number 136 also moving up there, that's Stefan Olausson from Sweden. But the Spaniard here, number 187, Polo Villamil, another of the less well-known names in Formula A this year, going very well indeed. There's Jerome Bourcard again, we saw him struggling earlier on, and he's still struggling. Just a quick note about another of the stars of the weekend who we're not actually seeing a lot of in this final, as number 129 still struggling to find a way past the Spaniard. That's James Courtney trying to get past the Spanish driver. Another one to mention, a good performance this weekend has been Andre Nicastro. Now, Andre Nicastro was in fact fastest in the timed sessions, in the timed practice, and had a very good run through the heats. Started well up in the pre-final, but he had problems in the pre-final, so it's meant that he's had to start this final from way back on the grid. And down in 28th place he started this final. But Andre Nicastro is one to watch for the future, there's no doubt about that. And also on a Mike Wilson chassis, in fact, but a new Brazilian name, and I should think that Andre Nicastro will be the Brazilian to watch in, one of the Brazilians to watch in Formula A in 1997. Disappointment for him in the pre-final, dropped him back down the order for this final, but nonetheless, Nicastro, one to watch for the future. So, back to the battles that are going on here, and still the battle going on here between Jean-Christophe Ravier and Giorgio Pantano. This is for 2nd position. Still our leader is Roberto Toninelli. There he is, the white crash helmet. And Toninelli has really opened up a huge advantage. He takes a quick glance over his shoulder and you can see how far back Jean-Christophe Ravier is. And Giorgio Pantano closed up a little bit, but no, Pantano in trouble in fact. Giorgio Pantano, that is Pantano, that's not him, but Pantano we just saw getting out of his car. It looks as though he's had an engine seize on him. Pantano, who was running in 3rd place, not quite as competitively as we've seen him, but and that's more problems. Probably looked like the chain came off there, and that's the race leader, Roberto Toninelli. He can't believe his luck. Roberto Toninelli, who had such a comfortable lead, and his chain has come off, and in the space of a couple of laps we've lost 2 of the favourites. Look to the left-hand side of the picture, there goes the chain snaking its way off. the sprocket, and Tony Nelly's chances of being world champion in Formula E have come to an end, and the race leader now is the Frenchman, Jean-Christophe Ravier. Well, what a surprise this is. Ravier, who really hasn't done anything this year, is now leading in the World Championship. Giorgio Pantano out in dramatic. There is Pantano, and look at the man in tears after that. He's never won the World Championship, he's never won a World Cup, but he was in with a chance here with Tony Nelly out of it. Certainly he was in with a chance of battling with Ravier for the win, and Pantano out of it, and a disappointing end to his season. Well, that's the way it goes, of course. Even the late great Ayrton Senna was never quite able to win the World Championship. He came so close on several occasions, but he was always to be denied. And now another young Brazilian in trouble as well. And well, Giorgio Pantano, such a disappointment for him, but the battle's still continuing. And further back we can see battles going on as Nicolas Chiesa, number 130, is involved in a good battle with Thomas Pichler. In fact, this is the battle for second and third now, with all of the changes going on further up. These two have become second and third as the race leader Jean-Christophe Ravier goes through, number 130 Nicolas Chiesa, and Thomas Pichler is next up in third position. Pichler on the CRG, also with Dunlop tyres, but we've got a Bridgestone tyred kart leading, a Vega tyred kart. Nicolas Chiesa in second place and Dunlop in third place. So it just goes to show the competitiveness of the different tyre makes here on the South Garda circuit. It's a good dice for second place, but Jean-Christophe Ravier really has disappeared up front. Nicolas Chiesa, Thomas Pichler still battling. Further back, James Courtney is running in fourth place. Giovanni Mara in fifth position. Sixth place, Simon Abadi. Then it's Polo Villamil, the Spaniard who we saw doing well earlier on, number 187. He's dropped back down to seventh position now. But James Wright has gone well. James Wright, who remember has started from the back of the pre-final and running on his father Simon Wright's frame, has worked his way up, well up. He's into eighth place in fact. So that's been a good drive from the only remaining British driver in the race after the problems for Anthony Davidson and Jenson Button. But we're coming through into the closing stages of this World Championship in the Formula E now, and it's a win, a surprise win. The new world champion is Jean-Christophe Ravier, second place for Nicolas Chiesa, and third place for Thomas Pichler. So Jean-Christophe Ravier joins the list of world champions. We've had two French world champions in the past, Emmanuel Collard in 1988 and David Terrien in 1993, also in Formula E. But now it's Jean-Christophe Ravier who comes in. Tony Kart will be delighted as Ravier takes the World Championship. And he's a protege of Jean Alesi as well. He comes from Avignon, the hometown of Jean Alesi. So Jean-Christophe Ravier has upheld the honour of his patron, if you like, Jean Alesi. And we'll be back with the Formula Super A in a moment. Welcome back to World Championship Karting, and we are now turning our attention to the top class, Formula Super A, and these guys going for the very best in the karting world in terms of awards. And let's speak to one of the drivers.
I'm relaxed with my mind for the race of this afternoon, but I know this track have many problems with the engine, because we arrive in many RPM on the street, and this is very dangerous for the engine. Also for the temperatures, in the afternoon I think will be warm. But I think the condition of my chassis for the tires and during the race is very good. I saw yesterday in the heats. I was not so very lucky for the third heats when I was third and I broke the engine. So in the pre-final I begin 8, and I think that I can be a good race for the final.
Alessandro Manetti speaking there, and remember he was the Formula A World Champion in 1991 and the Formula Super A World Champion in Cordoba in Argentina in 1994. So he's one of the world's top karters, has been for the last few years, but he's got some good competition here this weekend as ever. Johnny Myslivec, one of the top guys, he's European champion this year, and Myslivec really determined to try and take the title for Tony Kart, no doubt about that. And also Massimiliano Orsini, the reigning world champion from last year, hasn't had such a good European championship this year, Orsini, but in with a good chance. And there you can see number 1, Orsini, starting from 9th place on the grid. But the front two, as we get the race underway, Andrea Bellicchi on the outside of the front row, and Yuri Picchianti in 2nd place on the grid as they get underway. And Bellicchi, who's had a very, very good run through the heats, in fact has won every single one of his heats on the way through to this pre-final, and has to be in good shape for this race. 2nd fastest indeed in the timed practices as well. Bellicchi, as battle goes on behind him, Christophe Vassor well up, number 32 on the Tony Kart, but involved with a battle with teammate Johnny Myslivec. There is Bellicchi, who leads. In fact, no, he's in 2nd place, Bellicchi. Yuri Picchianti is our race leader at the moment, number 64. That's Picchianti. Then Bellicchi. There is Myslivec coming up into 3rd place, just ahead of teammate Christophe Vassor. And the rest of them going through. And, well, disappointment for the British drivers who entered into the World Championships on this occasion. None of the British drivers making it through into the pre-finals and final, with David O'Neill breaking a collarbone in one of the final heats on this Sunday morning. And so that's really bad news for David O'Neill, who's hoping to be out for the final round of the British Championships coming up this weekend. And also not making it through to the pre-finals, Bobby Gain, who was in the repechage. Top 6 of the repechage make it through into the pre-final. And Bobby Gain was running in 2nd place in that repechage, only for the engine to seize when he was in 2nd place, final lap, and he went out of the repechage. So neither Bobby Gain nor David Neal, or indeed Edward Peed, making it through into the pre-final. So disappointment from their point of view. But look at this, Johnny Myslivec coming up into 2nd place now, and he's gone past Yuri Picchianti, with Andrea Bellicchi having taken over the lead. Further back, the battle's going on. Kimmo Limatinen, number 6, having a fairly fraught contest at the moment, with Roberto Cardelli, number 45. And Roberto Cardelli on a fairly dramatic new all-kart frame. Many of the manufacturers using the opportunity to exhibit and use their new kart chassis that will be homologated for the next 3 years. So a chance for those manufacturers to show off their new equipment and to give them a bit of a run here in the World Championships if they feel they've got some advantage. There's Alessandro Manetti, number 21, the man we were speaking to just before the start of this pre-final. Manetti, twice world champion already, once in Formula A, once in Formula Super A. And in fact, it was Manetti who was well up, battling with Myslivec in the European race here, held in April. The first race saw a tremendous tussle between Manetti and Myslivec. In fact, they ended up coming together in the first race, and that allowed Agrell to come through and take the win. But Manetti and Myslivec both in good shape here for the World Championships. And remember, once again, this is the pre-final race, so this is all about grid positions for the final itself. And they won't be taking too many risks in this race. The main thing is to make it through with a reasonable finishing position, stay out of trouble, keep the equipment in good shape. As I mentioned earlier, perhaps they're saving their best engine for the final itself. They may be using their second best engine for this race, hoping it makes it through and gets them a good position for the final. Still up there, Yuri Picchianti, number 64, under pressure now from Alessandro Manetti. Johnny Mislievich leading this little group. And Mislievich, who's had a lot of success in recent years, driving for the Tony Kart concern. And Tony Kart, of course, with Jarno Trulli in recent years, who's been their main man. And Mislievich has taken over that role superbly this year, taking the European Championship and taking it well with 3 wins on his way to the title. Massimiliano Orsini taking 2 wins to second place. There is Orsini, second place in the European Championships this year with those 2 victories, but not quite able to match Mislievich. And it was Charlotte Hellberg who finished 3rd in the championship. She had a chance of the title going into the final round, but it all went rather wrong for her in Genk. But Orsini here, well, he doesn't seem to be quite as quick as we might have expected. Driving for Swiss Hutless and looking to retain his World Championship title. Orsini, a little older than some of the other guys in this level of karting. He's very much a kartist through and through, and a works driver for the Swiss Hutless concern. So, back to the battles going on up ahead. Still Andrea Bellicchi, number 8, with quite a comfortable lead. And Bellicchi, who's been in there he is, just flashing through the picture. He's been in such strong form here all weekend. Winner of every single one of his heats. That takes some doing, and to have such a reliable run as well through each of the heats to get to this point. That's pretty impressive stuff from Andrea Bellicchi. Drives for PC. Oh no, that is Bellicchi! Andrea Bellicchi out! The leader of the race, just as I was saying, what a good run he's had. Bellicchi, who drives for PCR, and he's had such a good run, he's out of it. And that means, of course, that he will have to start the final from the very back of the grid, and that effectively ends any chance he had of being world champion. Andrea Bellicchi cannot believe it. He's out, and it was an engine seizure that took him out. It wasn't just an off, it was his engine seized at this point on the circuit, and that is something that we've seen quite a lot so far this weekend, with the engines running at very, very high revs for quite a long time on this circuit. The circuit, in fact, has been changed since 1995. They ran on it in this form at the beginning of the year, but it is quite different to what it was. It means that the engine's taking more strain than normal, and the engine builders therefore having to allow for that. It means now that number 24 here, Johnny Mislievich, is our race leader, ahead of Alessandro Manetti. These two who battled here earlier in the year, and they come through to the checkered flag, and it is Mislievich who wins the pre-final. That takes him to pole position for the final itself. Manetti in 2nd place, Piccianti in 3rd, then Kimmo Limitainen in 4th. Good drive from him. Takaya Mutsuya, the Japanese driver, in 5th place, ahead of Roberto Cardelli, and Max Orsini in 7th place in the end. So we'll have to see what he can do in the final, which we'll be back with in just a few moments. Welcome back. So this is it then, the big one, the World Championships in Formula Super A, the grand final about to get underway, and this is the one they've all been aiming at all season long. The European Championships decided this is the big race. So a little bit of tension on the grid as everybody prepares for this one. And of course we saw some good battling going on in the pre-final. Alessandro Manetti, Johnny Mislievich will start from the front row of the grid. Behind them, Kimmo Limitainen, who did well in that first race, and Yuri Piccianti. Watch out for Max Orsini from 7th place on the grid. Daniele Perilla, 9th place on the grid, fastest lap as well. The two Swiss Hutless drivers going well in terms of speed, but not able to move up their position quite so well. One or two others as well. Charlotte Hellberg quite a lot further back than we might have expected. She's down in 23rd place on the grid for this final. Nicola Gianniberti, he's down in 31st place as well, a former world champion in both Formula A and Formula Super A. Quite a long way down. Gastão Fraguas, he's in 24th place on the grid. last year's Formula A world champion. So they're all there. We've got some top drivers ready to do battle here at South Garda for the title. World champion. Max Orsini's title from last year. As the race gets underway then, and the green light comes on and away they go, and Johnny Myslievich has made a terrible stop. It's Alessandro Manetti who leads, but Myslievich, who's number 24, look at that, he's dropped down to about 6th place, I think, there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 5th position for Johnny Myslievich, and that really was a disastrous start. Manetti it is who leads and has got away, and he will be delighted to see that Myslievich has dropped back so much. Behind him is Kimmo Limateinen, number 6, with a good battle going on further back behind them. Roberto Cardelli, number 45, but losing out as a result of that. Number 17 was David Four, and David Four indeed goes off, and disappointment for the Tony Kart driver. It looks as though he's out of the action now, and that is a huge disappointment for him. One of the front runners, Myslievich, loses another place, 2 more places in fact, so this is remarkable, as he loses out to Masato Shimoyama. He nipped through there, and Daniele Perillo also, I think, squeezing past, as Alessandro Manetti just controls the pace at the moment. He's where he needs to be. It's a long race, this one. He's got to control the pace, look after his tyres. Remember, these tyres have already done the pre-final. They can use one spare tyre between the pre-final and final if they want to add one somewhere around the kart. Gives them a bit of choice, but nonetheless, they do have to look after their tyres. Number 23, Takayo Mutsuya, leading that next little gaggle, and there is Myslievich with Max Orsini right behind him. So we've got 2 of the favourites back there with a lot of work to do if they're to fight their way back up the order. Number 62, Giuseppe Palmieri, is next up. Move here as Myslievich comes up and he takes 1 position. That's Masato Shimoyama who's gone past. But it's the other Japanese driver, Takayo Matsuya, who's got to try and fight away past now. These 2 had a great battle in the final round, one of the final rounds at Genk in the damp in the European Championship. And the Japanese drivers really are driving well now at this level. And surely it's not going to be too long before we see a Japanese world champion. Max Orsini, number 1. He's got some work to do if he's to keep the number 1 on his Swiss Atlas kart next year. Up front, remember, it's Alessandro Manetti. They flick it into this last couple of hairpins before they come round onto the start-finish straight. This is the longest straight they come onto, and they're building up to a speed of 117 kilometers per hour. That's about 75 miles an hour here, and they're coming into a virtually flat-out right-hander. This is where it really tests the commitment of the drivers. It's also very testing on the engines. The engines are revving up to 19,500 revs as they go into that right-hander, and it's some of the drivers are taking it flat out, some of them are just lifting fractionally off the throttle for the right-hander, but it means that the engines are revving hard and high for quite a long distance on the lap, and that's part of the reason that we've seen so many engine-related problems throughout the course of the heats, the pre-finals, and now the final. So there's Manetti, our race leader. He'll be hoping his engine holds together. He's onto the main straight now, building up to that maximum speed, and then he comes into this quick right-hander, just virtually flat out, flicks it into the right-hander. Very, very quick indeed. The engine's screaming away, and he maintains the lead still over Kimmo Limateinen in 2nd place, and Roberto Cardelli in 3rd place on this new all-kart. So Manetti, can he hold it all together? Can he take his 3rd World Championship driving for CRG? He took the World Championship with CRG in Argentina in 1994. He was driving for Tony Kart when he won the Formula A World Championship back at Le Mans in 1991. That's a few years ago now, but he's been a CRG man for quite a few seasons, and he's so ideally placed. Of course, remember, he has tried car racing as well, did a bit of Formula Super Renault last year in the European Championships, but ran out of money. But he's hotly tipped to perhaps join one of the ITC teams. That's if ITC continues, the International Touring Car Championship. A lot of conjecture as to whether that championship in fact, won't continue in 1997. But Alessandro Manetti surely with a chance of stepping up into big-time motor racing with his strong career. He put in some impressive testing. He tested a Mercedes touring car at the end of last year at Hockenheim, put in some very impressive times indeed. First time in a racing car of any sort. And you have to say, a Class 1 touring car, very different proposition to a 100cc kart. And here he is leading the World Championship finale. Limitano behind him, then Roberto Cardelli with the Nigel Mansell lookalike crash helmet. And he nips through into second place, in fact. Cardelli up into second. Can he hold that into the final hairpin onto the start-finish straight? It looks as though he's through safely. Mislievich and Orsini are still back there, still in a sort of 6th and 7th places by the look of it. It's the battle for second place continuing. And this is giving Manetti the chance to just open up a little bit of a lead now. 4th place is still Takayo Matsuya. 5th place for Shimoyama. And then 6th place for Johnny Mislievich. And these two battling for second, definitely that's dropping them back a little bit. There's Manetti, race leader. Just flicking it into the final hairpin. Crouches down a little bit over the steering wheel as he gets onto the straight. Orsini looks over his shoulder. Sees Natalie Maggio, number 20, behind him. Things settling down a bit now. Is Manetti heading for his 3rd World Championship. What a remarkable achievement that would be. 2nd place, Roberto Cardelli. Cardelli on the all-kart with Ital System Power Bridgestone tyres. Bridgestone dominating in the Formula Super A class, as they have done all year. Remember, this is the first World Championship being run to the new tyre pooling system, which basically means that everybody has access to the same tyres, and that, of course, is a major improvement for kartists. It doesn't mean that if you're one of the top works teams that you get special treatment from the tyre companies. Everybody has the same tyres, and of course that makes it a lot more fair for the amateur racers or semi-pros. And that's Charlotte Hellberg out, and that completes her rather disappointing weekend here. And Charlotte Hellberg, to finish 3rd in the European Championships this year, out of the action. The Swedish girl who races under a Dutch licence. Disappointing end to her season as Manetti continues to lead. Cardelli in 2nd place. And this a rather tame finale race at the moment. Not a lot going on in terms of change of position amongst the top 6. And I'm just wondering whether Mislievich is biding his time or whether he's actually in trouble. There's Charlotte Hellberg, and you can see fiddling with the cart, not much point really. She's out of the action. And what about Mislievich, European champion? What can he do now? Manetti, his great rival, is up front. And Mislievich, number 24, really doesn't look as though he's going to be able to do much about it. Still finding it difficult to get past the number 30 card of Masato Shimoyama. There's Timo Limitano. He's doing well. Limitano. Good run this from the Finnish driver. Limitano on the Swiss Atlas kart, Rotax Power. And this is one of the best runs that we've seen from him this year. And that's Orsini there, also on a Swiss Atlas kart, but quite a long way further back. Limitano finished 17th in the championship this year. Really only scored in the opening round of the championship here at Garda. Seemed to go well here, but not so well elsewhere. 2nd place, Roberto Cardelli. Manetti still leads then. Cardelli, Limitano, then Matsuya. And it's still the battle between Shimoyama. No, Mislievich has got through, in fact. Mislievich has got past Masato Shimoyama now. Now, are we going to be beginning to see a bit of a charge from Mislievich? Never won the World Championship title. European champion this year. Now he's chasing after the 2nd Japanese kart of Matsuya. In fact, putting the pressure on. And they've all closed right up in the battle for second place. Cardelli there in second. But this has given everybody a chance to close right up now. Manetti with a lead. Cardelli in second place. Limitainen now, Matsuya coming through to have a challenge there, but didn't quite make it. And now can Mislijevic take advantage of that? What a wide line in you see they choose into this final hairpin. Not the usual tight line in, and still that battle continues in that group for second through the quick right-hander. Difficult circuit on which to overtake. That quick right leads into these hairpin rights. Mislijevic bouncing up and down in his kart in an attempt to get past this gaggle of karts. Again, another little look from Matsuya. So far, oh, and that was a move there. It looks as though Matsuya was past Limitainen. And Limitainen and Matsuya battling away there. Limitainen's got back, they're making contact. They're right pushing themselves out wide, and that's giving Mislijevic the chance. Mislijevic manages to nip through and get past Matsuya as a result of all that. And Limitainen gets back into third place. So Mislijevic, the experienced old hand, if you like, takes advantage of these two really messing about somewhat in the battle for third place, and Mislijevic was able to get past Matsuya as a result. Says thank you very much. Matsuya says, what on earth are you doing? Limitainen being a little overprotective, and now Mislijevic dives down the inside of Limitainen. Now Mislijevic is on a bit of a charge. He's got past these guys battling, and in fact there's Matsuya and Limitainen. Limitainen's dropped back as a result of that. So losing out, perhaps he's worked his tyres a little bit hard as we get into the closing stages of this race. They really have had to work hard, physically hard as well. It's very high temperatures here in Italy. There has been all weekend, and that makes it hard work for the drivers. There's Manetti, but Cardelli in second is now coming under pressure from Mislijevic. Mislijevic challenging for second place, goes through on the inside. That was a nice move from Johnny Mislijevic, and now we've got a battle on our hands, I think, because Alessandro Manetti, who's led all of this race so far, now has his great rival Johnny Mislijevic, the Swedish driver. And look at this, there's contact between them. He's right with Manetti in the closing stages of the race now. We're almost on them. He's right with Manetti in the closing stages of the race now. We're almost on the last lap, and Mislijevic makes contact. Oh, Manetti's on two wheels, and the race leader is out and back on the circuit, but he rejoins in third place. And Johnny Mislijevic, who was running in sixth position for so long in this race, let's see what happened. There was a little bit of nudging going into the corner. Manetti got a bit sideways, he got up on two wheels, and Mislijevic dived through on the inside to take the lead in this World Championship finale. He's coming through. The checkered flag is being prepared. He's only got a couple of corners to finish off, and Mislijevic is going to back up his European Championship win with the World Championship title in Formula Super A. A superb victory for Mislijevic. He takes the win, and Tony Kart take the World Championship once again. Second place for Takayo Matsuya, and third place for the man who must be so disappointed, Alessandro Manetti with CRG. He led that entire race, and it all went wrong for him in the closing lap. There was just a little bit of nudging going on. It was so hard to tell. Mislijevic was so much quicker on those last couple of laps. He was looking for the way through. He just gave a little tap to Manetti. It looked as though Manetti had held it, but Mislijevic was able to nip through as Manetti went up on two wheels, and Mislijevic is the winner of the World Championship. Manetti has to settle for third place. Second place for Japan's Takayo Matsuya, and that's a brilliant result for the Japanese as well. So onto the podium, first onto the podium, the man who finished third in the Formula A is joined by the man who finished third in Formula Super A, Alessandro Manetti. And, well, he must be a disappointed man, Manetti, but that's the way it goes sometimes. Second place in Formula A, Nicolas Chiesa is joined by second place in Formula Super A, Takayo Matsuya. Great result for Japanese karting. But the two world champions now, there's the Frenchman Jean-Christophe Javier, who won the Formula A World Championship. Delighted, and what a surprise that is for everybody in it. The karting, the man from Avignon, and the Formula Super A champion, Johnny Mislijevic, takes the title. It's a Tony Kart domination of both Formula Super A and Formula A as they win both world titles. So, Jean-Christophe Javier holds up the World Championship title, the World Championship trophy rather, for Formula A, and Johnny Myśliewicz takes the one for Formula Super A. Well, the guys from CRG a little upset afterwards, but the result standing, and Myśliewicz the winner of the world title. And Myśliewicz now joins the list of luminaries who've won the World Championship as their confirmation of the Formula Super A result in the end. Myśliewicz from Matsuya, Manetti down to third in the end from Cardelli, Maggio and Daniele Perillo, who once again set the fastest lap in the grand final.